Good morning, everyone. I am Taylor Post, Swiftland's Office Manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Shields Up, Warding Off Negativity, and today's presenter, Linda Bruno. Linda Bruno has been developing and conducting training for libraries and other organizations for more than 15 years. She offers training on topics ranging from leadership skills to returning balance and lots of areas in between. Linda received her MBA from the University of Florida and has years of experience in hands-on management positions. She develops her trainings based on solid research and, more importantly, real-life application. Linda is also certified with DEI and Achieve Global. Please welcome Linda Bruno and enjoy her webinar this morning. Linda?
Thanks so much, Taylor, and welcome everybody to today's session. This happens to be, as odd as this will sound, one of my favorite topics. And one of the reasons it's one of my favorite topics is that I need a reminder about this just as much as anybody else does, but also because I think it's one of those topics that can be really helpful to people, not just in their work, but also in their lives. So if you hadn't had a chance to print the handouts that Taylor sent you with the reminder, I would suggest that you do that. And the reason I suggest that is that when we're through what we're going through right now, and I trust that we will be through at some point, there are still going to be other issues that pop up, aren't there? There are going to be things that create negativity around us as long as we are still breathing, basically. So I think it's just one of those things that could be very helpful for you to have this handy to go back to from time to time, as I get to do because I present this, because it does refresh me again. Before I get started, I want to share with you something that I did this morning just to keep my own day starting in a positive way. I have on my computer a tab for the Richmond, Virginia Falcon Camp. And it's peregrine falcons or peregrine, whichever way you pronounce that. And it's a breeding pair, and the mama put down 4 eggs, laid, I guess, 4 eggs, and they are starting to hatch. And the first one hatched a couple of days ago and came out all icky and gooey, and I missed it by about 5 minutes. I check on it a couple times a day, and I just happened to walk away. I came back and checked on it, and the baby had hatched, the chick had hatched. But this morning when I looked, I checked for about 5 seconds, and I clicked on it, and she was still incubating the other 3 eggs, but the little baby now is white and fluffy, and she was sitting on him as well, and his little foot stuck out. He poked his little foot out, and it just made me laugh right off this morning, and sort of got my day off to a really cool start. So just wanted to share that with you. It has nothing to do with our program today, except it does because it was a positive start to my day. So the first thing I want to call attention to is the shield that this guy is holding on the slide. And the reason I want to call attention to that is, number one, we never have a big enough shield, do we? We always need to enlarge our shield as much as we can. If somebody aims at him, if 2 people are aiming at him, he's not going to be able probably to deflect both of those arrows, maybe if just one is. But the other thing is he's going to have to keep moving his shield all around. And the danger of whatever's going to get him can come from anywhere, can't it? I want you to think about that as we're moving through today's program, because the danger of negativity can come anywhere for us as well. Yesterday we had an accident in our neighborhood. A fellow wasn't paying attention. His foot slipped off the brake. His wife was trying to get in the car, and it knocked her onto the concrete. And according to the first email I got from a neighbor, they thought she wasn't going to make it. And then I got another email from her saying, wonderful update. She's home. She just had to have a bunch of stitches. She doesn't have or she said she just has to have a bunch of stitches, and she sounds really good. And then she ended it with, I just hope she doesn't get a concussion. And I thought, oh my gosh, it was such a positive email to end it that way. And it's a possibility she could, but to end it that way just turned the whole thing negative. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to make sure I'm not doing things like that for other people. So I found a few quotes that really strike me. And one of them is, this one's just so meaningful to me. Negativity is cannibalistic. The more you feed it, the bigger and stronger it grows. We somehow all know this, and yet we don't necessarily pay as much attention as we should to this fact. We feed the negativity and then we wonder why 2 hours later we're being negative. So it's just one of those good reminders for us to make sure we're not feeding the negativity that's already out there. So I want you to think about this for a second and type it into the chat box if you would. There's something that I have posted on my desk just to remind myself. It says, I change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. In other words, I need to find something that will make me want to change. So why is it important to you personally to learn to put up your shield against negativity more effectively? Would you type that into the chat box, please? I see mental health, improved self-esteem. It becomes a habit very easily. You're right, Nevin. The word very easily, that's true words. Help family members who seem to thrive on it. Better outlook on life and to make people around you feel better as well. If I don't, I'll drown. That's a good way to put it. I feel better when I think positively. Absolutely, Claudia. I hear you. It brings me down to that level if I allow it. To promote positivity so it doesn't creep into other areas of my life. If I get affected by negativity, it can be contagious. And not only can it be, Sheila, it typically is, isn't it? Unless you're not around human beings, it spreads, doesn't it? Coworkers, patrons, let's add family, friends, right? Get better myself to a better world. Negativity won't allow me to be the best version of myself. You are all so on target. And look at all the great reasons. Even if it's not your strongest reason, you have a lot of supplemental reasons to do something different, don't you? It can cause everyone around you to become negative, promotes positivity. Our emotions affect how we interact with patrons. All of the above. I'm not going to read anymore. I know you all can read those. But I just wanted to stress to you how important this is. But the thing is, if nothing changes today when you leave this webinar, not that this is a magic wand or anything like that, but it's a decision you have to make, isn't it? Because if nothing changes when you leave, nothing changes. In other words, the webinar itself isn't what's going to help you ward off negativity. It's what you learn through the webinar, and then you make the decision to apply it. I saw this phrase it's been a couple years ago now, and it said transformation. Information is not transformation, is what it said. And I can give you a lot of information, and I've used almost everything that I put in this program today. But that's not going to transform anybody, is it? So we have to be careful and make sure we're looking at ourselves through this process. So let's take a look at that. I see a lot of good comments still coming in, and thank you for those. I don't want to bore everybody by reading all those comments, but they're not boring to me. I could sit and read those all day. So thank you for sharing those. The thing I want you to think about, as I said, you'll need to make some kind of a transformation when you leave today to become more effective. And I suspect many of you are already working on this or you wouldn't be here, but we can all use a little boost, can't we? So you're going to have to think through what areas are you struggling with to try to be more effective at warding off negativity. So I wanted you to think about this thing called the Johari window. And when I first heard about it, when I first started doing training many years ago, I was very impressed by the name. I thought this is really sophisticated. And what it boils down to is that the folks that developed this were called Joe and Harry. So that's why they came up with the Johari window. But I love what it says to us. It talks about the fact that we all have an open area to us. I know about my open area. You know about my open area. You know what I do for a living. If you've met me, you know what I look like. You know what I sound like. That's my open area. What I know and you know about me. There's a hidden area, what I know about me that I have not shared with you. We all have hidden areas. It doesn't have to be anything deep and dark, but they might be hidden. But here's the area that really can sneak up on us, which no pun intended, our blind area. What other people know about me that I don't see, or perhaps I intentionally don't see. And that's what I want you to think about today. Because sometimes we're part of the problem, whatever that problem might be. And that can be a blind area for us. So I want us to think about our blind areas as we're moving through today and be honest with ourselves about how we can do better. Shirley said perception. Yeah, it kind of is, except that a lot of their perceptions are probably spot on if it's a blind area for us, if that makes sense. In other words, I would swear to you, I have a friend who's extremely negative, and I've tried to, somebody mentioned earlier, helping other people change, and we can't change anybody, can we? I've tried to help that person recognize that, but in their mind, it's the way the world is. So why wouldn't I just say all the negative stuff? That's a blind spot because it comes across to other people. And she actually said to me a few months ago, I don't know why I can't keep any friends. What do you say to somebody like that? Exactly, Cheryl. And I don't interact with her a lot, so it's okay. I mean, I watch her house for her when she's on vacation, things like that. But I can't carry that burden. So we need to make sure we're not that person in a relationship. Exactly, Joan. They have to change themselves and we can support them and we can help them, but it doesn't mean they're actually going to decide to make that change. Just like Linda Bruno is trying to help you today, but it doesn't mean you'll decide to make the change. One thing I do want to point out to you though is if there's something that kind of triggers in your mind today that you'd like to flesh out a bit more for yourself, always feel free to drop me an email. I'm available to answer those emails whenever you send them. I'm in my office all the time now because I'm not traveling, but just drop me an email and I'm happy to give you my objective viewpoint or some tips or guidelines if I can, with the disclaimer that I'm not a psychologist. That's not my field of study, but I have studied it a lot. So, and I've experienced it a lot. So I want to talk to you a little bit about emotional intelligence, and some of you have heard me talk about this, but I don't think we can talk about negativity without a couple elements of emotional intelligence being covered. The first is self-awareness, and I've kind of alluded to that already when we're talking about the blind spot and things like that, but we need to be able to recognize our emotions as they happen. It's great to reflect on them a week later and think, oh my gosh, I got kind of mad at Deb and I shouldn't have said that. And maybe I need to apologize. But if I don't recognize it in the moment, then it's not emotional intelligence because the only way I can actually manage those emotions is in the moment. The other thing that I think is really important about this particular element is knowing which emotions I'm feeling and why I'm feeling them. I heard somebody on a podcast a while back, Dave Ramsey, actually, I listened to him a lot, and he was talking about when his kids were growing up, they would say, he made me mad. And he would stop them and he would say, no, nobody made you get mad. He may have acted like a jerk, but it was your choice to get mad. Now let's see why you're mad. It's not because of him. What's going on with you that quote made you mad? And this question is so hard to face sometimes because the answers are not always comfortable for us. It's something within us that's causing us to react that way. So to me, this is one of the key points for today. If you have your handouts there, circle item 1A, knowing which emotions I'm feeling and why. I actually ask myself this sometimes when I feel something kind of sneaking up on me and I know that it's going to turn me negative. I will say, okay, what's going on here? Why am I feeling this way? And sometimes it's very simple and sometimes it's a little deeper and I have to step back and say, what are you going to do about it, Linda Bruno? So we need to understand there's a connection between our feelings and what we think and what we do and what we say. Our thoughts create our emotions. We can't stop the thoughts and we really can't stop the emotions, but we can decide what we're going to do with them. Because if we don't decide what we're going to do with them, that's what creates our behaviors. And if we haven't made a decision to handle them in a positive way, those behaviors are not going to be positive. So it's kind of one of those circle of life things. We need to make sure when the thought comes and it triggers an emotion that we choose to do something with that emotion so that we don't behave in a way that's going to create even more havoc because it sometimes does, doesn't it? Marcia said probably from life experience. Yeah, a lot of times that's what happens is when we ask where those emotions are coming from, a lot of my emotions, some of you know me, have come from low self-esteem when I was growing up as a child. And so sometimes when something negative is happening and I'm having negative feelings, I step back and I see that's where it's coming from. And as soon as I identify it, I can start to deal with it. When I don't identify it, I start blaming other people. I become a victim. I do all of those things that's just going to, remember what I said, feed the negativity. And I don't want to do that. So my next question for you is if you have ants, and this is not the little ants that are crawling around outside this time of year, but I read about this several years ago, and it really struck me that I think most human beings deal with this. And the thought process of ants, as far as using it as an acronym, is that they're automatic negative thoughts. And the story that I was reading where I first came across this term was about a fellow who was taking his son to a psychologist to deal with his ants. And I thought, my first thought was, that's odd. Did he have an ant farm and they died and I wasn't being facetious. I just thought, why would he need to go to deal with ants? And then he explained what that meant. And it was like somebody turned on a light bulb for me because we all have them. But the point is, how long do we let them crawl around inside our heads, right? Those automatic negative thoughts. They come. It might be about a person, it might be about a patron, it might be about your work, it might be about a family member, whatever. Automatic negative thoughts come to us, but they can really carry quite a load. Real ants, and this is a true picture, can carry anywhere from 10 to 50 times their own weight. Think about the negativity inside you. Does it not weigh you down? And I'm not talking just emotionally. I believe that negativity can physically weigh us down. Brent said, emotional intelligence is exactly what I've always wanted to know more about. I just did not know what it was called before I saw your webinar about it. Oh, Brent, that's so nice. Thank you for that comment. What a nice thing to say. You just made my day. That's feeding my positivity. So thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. But yeah, emotional intelligence was life-changing to me. Learning about that about 15 years ago, but learning about it, yes, I teach about it, but learning about it for myself was a very uncomfortable process to go through because I had to face some things. So I want you to face some things today in a kind and gentle way, but that's what I'm here to help you do. And I may step on your toes while I'm doing it. And I don't intend to offend. I intend to help you. So keep in mind when you're carrying that negativity, you're weighing yourself down, aren't you? And we need to be really careful about that. So I mentioned if we don't recognize our emotions as they happen, it's very difficult to manage them. We need that second piece of emotional intelligence, which is self management. It's your ability to manage your own behavior in a positive way. What are your emotional reactions to situations and people? You're going to have them. And there are going to be many times in life that they're negative. But what do you do with them? My husband, who was my best friend, passed away about 3 years ago, and we were together for decades. And he lived in a very negative family and grew up that way, and that was just the normal. And so we would talk about it. And I can remember one day we were traveling, and he started to say something negative, and I said, you probably need to take me back home. And I was going to travel to a Panera, and he was going to drop me off while he did his thing, and I did some program development. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, I can't deal with your negativity for 2 hours while we're driving and then try to be positive while I'm developing my content. And he said, well, how do I stop it? And so we had this wonderful 2 hour discussion. But I will tell you that was his turning point. He'd had that problem for years, but that was his turning point. Not me saying that, but that he really wanted to manage his behavior. And he struggled with that. And the 10 and a half years he was sick, he would apologize and he'd say, I'm sorry, I'm turning negative. And I finally said to him one day, I said, if anybody has a right to be negative, it's you. Please don't ever apologize for that with what you're going through. So there are times in life it's very normal to be negative. And somebody said to me once, it was a lady at a workshop, and she walked up to me at break and she said, I need to figure out if my emotions are okay. I said, stop right there. And she looked at me like, "Ah, that was rude." And I said, no, what I want you to hear is your emotions are okay because they're your emotions. Do you hear that? I'm not telling you to stop the emotions. I'm asking you to please try to manage them. Sheila said, I have ants constantly running, so I try to remove their load before they get to where they feed. Exactly, Sheila. That's exactly right, because there are places for them to feed. And we can manage our behaviors in a more positive way, can't we? If we make that choice. I've known people in the past that have just boldly said to me, this is just who I am. Everybody knows how I am. That may be true. That may be why people don't want to be around certain people. Just because it's who you are or how you grew up or your past experiences or who you work with, remember, it's your choice. Nobody made you that way. Do they impact you? Absolutely. Do they influence you? 100%. And then you step back and say, I don't think I want to go there. It's a cop out. Exactly, Cheryl. That's exactly what that is. So when we're talking about self-management, it's managing those disruptive emotions and impulses. Brent said, do you know any good books on emotional intelligence? I do, Brent. Would you drop me an email? And I can give you a couple really, to me, phenomenal ones. I said, I really want to learn about that topic. Not being negative can be a real challenge. Absolutely. It's why we have this webinar. And that's why I mentioned first thing. It's why I love to do this, because it keeps me focused where I need to go. And it's really hard in the moment. You are absolutely right. And there's a certain thing called righteous anger, where when I see children, or especially children and animals, kind of defenseless, being abused or being belittled or whatever it might be, that's righteous anger. But what are you going to do with it? Spouting off to somebody, telling somebody off, that's not really effective, is it? So managing those disruptive emotions and impulses. Now hear me really clearly, Brent, because this might be a key point for you. We're not talking about suppressing the emotions. You hear the difference? We're talking about controlling them so they can't control you. Not suppressing them, because that will make you sick. It's what gives people ulcers, and it contributes to things like cancer and blood pressure and heart disease and all that kind of stuff. Please don't ever think I'm telling you to suppress your feelings. What I'm saying is recognize them and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. If I'm okay with feeling this way, and that's a choice, then that's fine. But if I'm not, I decide what I'm going to do. So I'm going to ask, yes, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. That's the first one I read, Reva. And I'm going to be honest with y'all. I went to sleep a few times because it's so research oriented, which is exactly what I needed to start studying this. It was a wonderful book, but it was a little slow, if you will. And then I found a book that kind of recapped, and I'll just tell you, and if anybody wants to email me, I can give you the exact titles and so forth. But there's a book called The Emotional Intelligence Quick Book. The Emotional Intelligence Quick Book by Travis Bradberry and Jean Greaves. And Travis Bradberry has since monetized that to the nth degree, like Daniel Goleman didn't think to do, but it's phenomenal. They've researched over 1 million people now in his organization called Talent Smart. So I actually subscribe to his newsletter as well. And about once a week, I find a topic there that helps me stay on target. So Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman and the Emotional Intelligence Quick Book by Travis Bradberry, and that's Berry, and Jean Greaves. Claudia said sometimes anger is a manifestation of hurt. Exactly. It's less vulnerable to show anger than to tell someone that really hurt me. That's absolutely right. It's that why behind it, isn't it, Claudia? It's I'm angry. Why am I so angry? I'm going to take just a second to type those titles in real quick, just so you have them. So the one is already typed above, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goodwin. The other one is Emotional Intelligence Quick Book. Oh, yay, Deb. Thank you. I appreciate that. There you go. The Emotional Intelligence Quick Book. She typed it in for me already, so I appreciate that. Those are the two best ones, and I've read 2 or 3 others, and I read articles. Like I said, I subscribe to the email newsletter from Travis Bradberry, his organization Talent Smart, and it's very helpful. In this kind of a situation, it's just phenomenal, and it's so important. So, of course, if you're going to manage your disruptive emotions and impulses, you're going to stay calm and composed in upsetting situations. Now, it doesn't mean, again, hear me clearly, that the thought and the emotion doesn't come. It's that split second where you say, I'm angry. What am I going to do with this? And I'm going to give you a couple of really weird tips here that work for me. There are phrases that help me when something is going on like this. And one of them is when I feel an emotion taking over me. And when you're tired or you're hungry or you're lonely or you're just feeling uncertain like we do right now, the emotions take over a little bit quicker. And when I feel that, I will actually say out loud to myself, this isn't serving you well. And it sort of snaps my head around. Find a mantra, find a motto, find a phrase that you can say to yourself when this happens. And while you're saying it, you give your brain time to stop and say, okay, am I going to choose to go down that path? Or am I going to stop and say, what's behind this? How am I going to deal with it? The other phrase that I use, thank you, Brent. I appreciate that. I think that'll be good for them. The other phrase that I use is, if you've ever seen Dr. Phil, and I don't watch his program, but I remember years ago when he was first getting started, I saw a clip on, I think it was Oprah probably, and somebody was talking to him, and you could tell the person was making excuses and that they were kind of maybe stretching the truth to make those excuses about how they were behaving. And he just leaned across the table and looked them straight in the eye, and he said, how's that working for you? And it was like somebody just put that light bulb on over my head. And I thought, that's exactly what we need to ask ourselves when we're going down this path. How's that working for you? You to you. You're speaking to you. Exactly, Dawn. It works, doesn't it? But it doesn't have to be those phrases. You can come up with one of your own that will be effective, that you just say it out loud or say it in your head. Now, I'm going to also be honest with you and tell you there have been times where I have said that and I've gone down the negativity path anyway. Have you ever made those choices? You all know, if you've been in my programs before, I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to tell you I'm perfect at any of this. There have been times when I have been lonely or tired or disappointed or hurt or whatever it is that I recognize it. I know exactly what's happening and I go ahead and go down that path. But here's the deal. I put a time limit on it. And I say to myself, okay, you can wallow in this for about 5 minutes and then it's time to get back to life. Because what's the purpose? That 5 minutes is now gone. I don't get that back. I'm not going to wallow in it for a day because that's a whole day I lose to negativity. But I have said to myself, right now, the way I feel, I just need to experience this. And then I experience it for a period of time, not a very long period. I call it my recovery time now. Used to be a lot longer. Now I can shorten it and I can say, you know what? Time to move forward. So hopefully those things helped you. And again, drop me an email if you need more information. I'm more than happy to share that. Another thing is thinking clearly under pressure. And we get under pressure when people are shouting at us or when somebody's upset with us or whatever it might be. That's a part of that self-management too, isn't it? So I want to take this middle section of page 2 and talk to you about some areas that might be affected by your negativity, that might need special attention when you're trying to ward off that negativity. We're not going to deal with the tips yet. We'll deal with those in a few minutes. But I want you to take this section of your handouts and write your own personal reflective answers about what areas you know are being affected in your life because of negativity and your maybe ineffectiveness, let's put it that way, at actually warding it off. So the first area is health. Several of you mentioned that when you were plugging in, why is this important to me? But there are a lot of areas to health, aren't there? So let's take a look at that. If you have any issues in this area, write them down here so that you have that compelling reason to do something about this. So the first area is physical. Are you tired? Are you lethargic? Are you not sleeping well? Are you gaining weight? What physical manifestations of negativity are weighing on you that will help you change by feeling good about the changes you're making and not by beating yourself up. So just write that down for yourself on your handouts. And if you're not using the handouts, maybe just a note so that you remind yourself of what's going on. So there's the physical area of our health. There is the mental area of our health, and several of you alluded to that as well. Are you sad most of the time? We all get sad from occasion to occasion, or fearful, or angry, or disappointed, or hurt. But if that's the overarching feeling for you because of negativity, then that might be an area you want to make a note of on item number 6. How am I feeling? What do I want to make sure I lessen, not get rid of, because we don't. We don't get rid of the negative feelings ever completely, but we can certainly lessen them. And let's look at it this way. I want you to just close your eyes for a split second. Picture a very long horizontal line that starts with A and ends with Z. If you came in today and you were at, let's say, G in handling your negativity, what if we move you to an M after today because you chose to use some of these tips? Would that not make a difference in your mental health? I think it probably would. So I hope that's one that you can take hold of as well. Another one is relational because, when we're negative, as you heard a couple of my examples earlier, it can affect relationships. And so if that's an area, maybe you're taking it out on somebody. Maybe you're snapping at people. Maybe you've lost touch because you just don't have the energy to keep up the contact right now. Maybe that's an area that you need to grab hold of and say, this is why I want to make sure I make some changes. Another one is financial. And the reason I have this one in here is I used to get very upset in my what I call my former life when I was in the corporate world. It was a very male-dominated world. It was a very good old boys. I'm just going to say that. I know that's probably not politically correct, but that's exactly what it was. It was that kind of an industry. And although I worked my way up in that company, I would get very frustrated and hurt, honestly. Like Claudia was saying earlier, I would be angry because I was hurt that I was being treated differently. And so I would just go spend money. Now, I didn't go into debt. I made good money at that job, but I would get very frustrated with myself 3 months later when I would see things hanging in my closet with the tags still on because I was using retail therapy to get over my anger. So if that's an area you need to be careful of, write it down. Maybe you need to pay more attention to your general expenses. And I was listening to somebody yesterday, probably Dave Ramsey, while I was exercising. And yes, it was him. And he said, we've gotten into a click and buy world now, especially with the pandemic. And so people are spending more money. They're setting records online buying. Part of that is that people don't want to be in the stores, but part of it is it's boredom, it's frustration, it's uncertainty. And so the money is being spent. So we need to be careful about that as well. If that's an area for you, just jot yourself a note. The last one is spiritual, whatever that looks like to you. But do you feel a sense of dis-ease in yourself? And I'm not talking mental health, I'm just talking about that unrest that you might feel. If that's an area that's important to you that you want to make sure you grab hold of something today that will help in that area, write that down as well. And the other one, I had health as the first one, and we covered several areas within health, but the other one is work. Is there something in your work that needs special attention as you're trying to ward off negativity? Whatever that might look like. Just jot it down for yourself so that you can take note and try to come up with some things that might help. So what can I do? I told you I would cover the areas that you might be struggling with, and then we're going to talk about the tips to help with those. So physical health. If you're not physically healthy, and some of us have underlying issues that can cause problems anyway. So we need to make sure we're doing our best to take care of our physical health. And so you're going to hear some things here that you're going, yeah, right, Linda, I hear that all the time. So do I, but do I always do them? Probably not. The first one is to eat well. I tend to eat pretty well, but I'm going to tell you in the last month, my snacking has gotten out of control. and I'm not snacking on carrots and celery. So it's an area that I'm becoming more aware of. It kind of snuck up on me. I did the thing, oh, I'll pick this up at Walmart and I'll get myself this as a treat. But I bought more than I needed for the treat because they might be out of them and then I wouldn't have anything. And you know how that goes. Are we eating well? You know what that looks like. Lots of fruits and vegetables, all those kinds of things. Are you sleeping well? What do you need to do to make sure you're sleeping well? The experts say it needs to be a cool room. I turn down my air conditioning at night by several degrees so that it's cool and I snuggle in and I sleep deeper that way. I even bought a silk pillowcase a while back, which I thought, this is hoopla. There's no real truth to this, but I do believe I'm sleeping a little bit better on my silk pillowcase. So whatever it is for you, keep the room dark. I actually cover up my alarm clock because it's like you could land a jet in front of my alarm clock. It's so bright. So I just cover it up every night. It's one of my habits that I get before I go to bed. Make sure the room is cool, dark, and quiet. So whatever you need to do to get good sleep. Reva said I work the 2 to 10 shift when on campus, and now that I'm at home, I'm eating healthier than when I work at the library. Yes, I can imagine that, Reva. That's good. I have the opposite thing going on here. I have been working at home forever, and I was eating better before this all happened, but I'm getting it back. So there's your encouragement. Exercise, whatever that looks like to you. I'm going to be honest, and some of you have probably heard me say this. Whoever told you that after 6 months of doing exercise, you'll love it, lied. Or at least they lied to me. I still don't love it. I still get up almost every day and do it. I didn't today because I've got a couple webinars, but I will exercise later this evening and get in at least 7,000 steps. But yesterday I had in 14,000 steps. I don't love it, but I know I will absolutely 100% tell you I feel better because I exercise. I wish I could tell you differently because I would quit if I could, but it does make me feel better and it helps me fight the negativity. That's what you need to hear. It helps me fight the negativity. It creates those endorphins running around in your system going, oh boy, we're going to have a good day. That's what you want, right? You want to start your day off that way or end it that way, whichever way you do it. Get some sun. Not a lot of sun. Went to the dermatologist the other day for my annual checkup, and he said, it's the first time I met with him, and he said, yeah, you've got one of those complexions that has a propensity to skin cancer. And I knew that. He wasn't being negative. We were just talking about what I would need to watch for. But I said, yeah, I walk my dog for a few minutes in the morning. I typically take a walk down to the mailbox area. And he said, do you wear sunscreen? And I said, not usually. And he said, okay, it wasn't a big deal as long as I have it checked. I'm a big, my skin is so sensitive. The sunscreen makes me break out, et cetera, et cetera. So, but getting sun is good for you, even if it's standing at the window looking out at the sun. Somebody said when we first entered the room this morning, what a beautiful day it was. I write in my journal 25 days a month, it seems like. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful day. What a beautiful day. Yes, a walk on a cool sunny day. Exactly. So get some sun. It has been proven scientifically that it improves your mood. Drink. Now you notice I don't have a bottle of wine there. Not saying you can't have a glass of wine, although that is a depressant. Don't know if you know that. Very enjoyable to drink it, but then it's a depressant. But drink water. And I can attest to this one because I've had kidney stones in the past and I've gotten on a routine of drinking 60 ounces of water a day. But last week I had a lot of things scheduled online and you can't drink 60 ounces of water a day when you're online. And guess what? Last night I had a kidney stone moving. First time in probably 3 or 4 years. So I know that that will make you feel better. It washes toxins out of your system, keeps, your brain more hydrated, all kinds of things. Yes, Claudia, I did. It'll be fine. It'll go away eventually. Get some rest. Now, you may think she just said sleep. Rest is different though, isn't it? Do you have a moment in your day where you sit quietly and just rest? Have you ever watched a cat just looking out the window? They do sleep a lot, but sometimes they're just resting too. So we need to make sure we're getting some rest somewhere along the way, and that's different than sleep. So whatever that looks like to you. And I think that I talked to somebody the other day and they said, our life looks so different right now than it did 3 months ago. And I'm thinking we need to make some changes when things go back to normal, whatever normal looks like. Because we got on a treadmill, didn't we? And not the good kind, not the exercise kind. We got on a treadmill where we are just running, running, running with no rest time, no relaxation time. So, this is how you protect your physical well being so that you can deal with negativity more effectively. So, what do we do about our mental well being? Well, one of the things that I do occasionally, I don't do this a lot because typically I need to focus and I need quiet to focus. But sometimes if I'm working on something that's rather routine, like typing up handouts or something like that, I will turn on a channel on the computer called Yellow Brick Cinema Music. And they have 3 hour, maybe even longer than that now, loops of instrumental music, spa music, meditation music, just quiet, relaxing guitar playing, piano playing, whatever it might be. And it can really calm my mind. Because whoever said that about the ants running around all the time, my mind is always active. And so sometimes I just need that in the background to kind of take away that inner flurry, if you will, that inner activity. So sometimes soft music can be helpful. Smooth jazz, absolutely, on a sunny day on the beach. Yes, and if you're in your office or at home working from home, listening to smooth jazz with a picture of a sunny day on the beach, right? That picture's pretty intriguing up there. Maybe it's meditation, whatever that looks like to you. Years ago, meditation was a certain thing that you did for a certain time and you did it this way. Now it's more about getting inside your own head and just thinking through some things and being reflective and being still and resting during that time. It might be journaling. What I said when I wrote down, think it's going to be another sunny day or it's a beautiful day or whatever. I journal every day, and I have two journals. I have a gratitude journal that I write in every single day, at least one thing, often two or three things, sometimes even more than that, but at least one. And I don't repeat unless it's accidentally. And I'm on item number 2,800, and I think 2,879 this morning was what I wrote down, and I've been doing it for less than 3 years. It does two things for me. First of all, it helps me focus on the positive, which has been crucial for me for the last 3 years. And secondly, it helps me look for the positive. And I have not found any negative to writing in my gratitude journal. And I only write a phrase: sunny day, fresh almonds, hot coffee, cat on my lap. Exactly, Deb. Cat on my lap, whatever. Those are the things I write down. A beautiful flower that I saw, somebody's phone call, somebody sent me a text, whatever it might be. But I also do a regular journal that's very small, kind of like the one that's in the picture, very pretty. I started it on a spiral notebook, and that was boring and ugly. I wish I had started it in a pretty journal that you can get at Ross for $2.99. But now I write one page a day. I date it. I write my page about what's going through my head. And lately, I've been looking back a year to see what was going through my head then. And that's been very enlightening and has really kind of made me step back and think through some things. So that might be a possibility for your mental help in getting you to deal with negativity better. Reframe your thoughts. Do you get up and rise and shine, or do you rise and whine? I heard that phrase a few years ago and I thought, oh my gosh, I want to make sure I rise and shine every day. Do you walk out to the refrigerator, you drop a jug of milk and start saying, oh, that figures, that's just my luck. This is the way the whole day is going to go. Or do you say, gosh, I'm glad I got that out of the way this morning? Or I'm glad it was a plastic jug instead of a glass one. Reframe your thoughts. Deb said, do you write down your negative thoughts or just what is positive in your life? The gratitude journal is strictly gratitude, Deb. The other journal, absolutely, I write down those negative thoughts. It helps me process it. I'm an introvert, so that helps me process it. I don't dwell on them and I don't feed them. I acknowledge them. Does that make sense? Because I think it's important to acknowledge them. And then once I've written them down, amazingly, they're less negative because they have no control over me once I've written them down. While they're still in my head, they're controlling me, aren't they? So I hope that helps. So reframing your thoughts, do you have to go to work or do you get to go to work? Even if it's going to be a long, hard day, you still get to go to work. A whole bunch of people right now that don't get to, right? So reframing your thoughts about whatever is popping into your mind can be very helpful. Learn as you're here today, whether it's about something about negativity or it's about a new summer reading program or how to help your students come back for a semester or whatever it might be, learning and growing. It's really hard to stay negative when you're learning and growing, isn't it? If you're intentional about it. And so many of these things require intentionality. And we need to acknowledge that we do need to be intentional about them. And then getting creative, whatever that looks like to you. It might be painting, it might be photography, it might be knitting, crocheting, whatever it might be. But being creative, writing is one of my creative pursuits. I haven't been able to do it to get published in the last 4 or 5 years, but I got some published before that. And so that writing in my journal helps me be creative as well. How do you keep your shield up regarding your health as far as relational? Well, think about that. Stay social, but don't get sucked into social media. Just saying. If I'm stepping on toes, I apologize, but this is a big one to me. I have a friend who will call me and he'll say, I was on the, get this, golden retriever site on Facebook. And I'm thinking, how can anybody be negative on a golden retriever site? And they get into what's basically internet fistfights on social media. So be careful about that because it influences your other relationships. Reach out and talk to somebody that you haven't talked to for a while, especially now. You need that connection, don't you? Cheryl says it's exhausting. Social media spurs outrage culture. Yes, exactly. And comparison culture too, Cheryl, right? And that's never going to be good for our negativity when we're comparing ourselves to other people. There's always somebody out there prettier than me, taller than me, younger than me, richer than me. I'm not going there. I have a lot to be grateful for. 2,879 things. Why would I do that? Yes, laugh to avoid negativity. Yes, absolutely. We'll talk about that. Financial thing, go to Dave Ramsey's website. He now has a 14-day free trial for his Total Money Makeover or whatever it's called, or Financial Peace University. I can't remember which one's the free trial. But if that's an area that helps you. When you're stressed and strained about finances, hard to ward off negativity. And the other one's spiritual, whatever that looks like to you. Be mindful, be grateful, be still, meditate, the things we looked at. Sometimes in the moment, Brent, for you, that anger thing, when we talk about it's not really spiritual, but it's mental, spiritual, relational, all rolled into one, just breathing that deep.
Hi guys, it looks like she may have been disconnected. I noticed Adobe is being a little finicky, but she's back, so let's get her up here. Um, Here we go.
Yes, Adobe could make me negative. And it's funny because Taylor and I were just talking beforehand. I hope you can all hear me now. Good, thank you. We were talking right before we got started about how the technology is working. That's going to be a good day. And we both talked about the fact that it just seems like every program out there has some kind of glitch from time to time. So thank you. Yeah, that was funny. I did not plan it that way, believe me. It stresses me out too much for me to plan something like that. So thank you all for your patience. So how do you keep your shield up at work? Now we're going to break this down a bit. Choose not to engage, or at least don't be a part of it. You don't have to be the one instigating or feeding it, right? So choose not to engage. Trade smiles. Find things that make you smile, that are kind and, just kind of innocent, but trade smiles with your coworkers. Give them things that they can smile about. Maybe it's funny stories. Maybe it's dancing goats. Maybe it's whatever it might be. Refuse to bring it home, even if you're working at home. When your work is done, your work needs to be done, because what happens when you bring it home is you take it back to work the next day, don't you? So be careful about that. Find ways to take a mental break at work. It might be for 1 minute. Go over and stand by the window, look at the sunshine, take a deep breath, go get a drink of water, but take that mental break. If you don't sequester yourself during lunch, find a way to do that, because that break is very important to your productivity. Tracy said trade smiles, we're all wearing masks, but you know what? Funny, Tracy, you can see somebody's smile, can't you? When I was at the dermatologist the other day, she, of course, was wearing a mask. I was wearing a mask. She wasn't smiling. I tried to make conversation during it wasn't the dermatologist, it was the nurse, and she never smiled the whole time. You can see it in somebody's eyes, can't you? Valerie said, take a walk. Absolutely. Look for eye smiles. There you go, Tracy. Yep, they're there if we look for them, if they're actually there. Remember that your work environment doesn't define you, even if you've had a bad day, even if somebody's been negative toward you or whatever. That's not what defines you. You need to reach deep inside and find what's important to you. Use your time off wisely, whether that's lunch, like I said, or whether it's after hours, and especially working from home. I have somebody that I work with on programs, and because I work from home, I set my time off, but it's typically not the same time off everybody else is off. So it might be 7 o'clock at night. I've got something on my to-do list. I go ahead and send the email thinking, okay, that's off of my list. And this person will email me back at 8:30 or 9 o'clock at night. It looks like Deb may have gotten kicked off that time. I'm not sure what happened for Deb. So hopefully she'll be able to rejoin us. But do you see what I'm saying there? Use your time off wisely, whatever that time off looks like for you. Set goals. And when I say set goals, what I mean by that is they don't have to be huge stretch goals. You need some of those, definitely. You need long-term goals. I'm talking about, what do you want to get done today? Just today. Yesterday I came in and I'm working on a special project, and it's got 11 pieces to it. So my goal for yesterday was to get 3 done. And I thought, I don't care how long I have to stay here, I'm going to get those done, because I knew I would feel more positive about that. I got 4 done. So I was very pleased with that. So set those goals, not little things that you know you can get done in 5 minutes, but something that's important to you that will make you feel more positive if you can accomplish that today. So set goals. That can be very helpful to you. Fill your environment with positivity. Look around you right now, wherever you're at. What do you have around you that makes you feel positive? Would you type that into the chat box? Tea, flowers, crystals, my dog, love that. Tinkerbell, who Tinkerbell is, my daughter, cats, coffee, radio, kindness. Oh, I like that. A clean house, yes. Sunshine, quiet, posters, lanyards, windows, pictures, cook pictures of animals. So you see how easy it is for us to take those for granted, right? I bet some of you had to look. Fill your environment with positivity. What's around you? I have a picture on my desk on my vertical file sorter of a visit that I made to a place called Ears, an endangered animal rescue sanctuary, when I first moved here about 15 years ago. And it was before they were giving public tours, and my vet happened to make the connection for me. And so the lady called to set up an appointment at that time. And she said, wear old clothes, because we've got 3-month-old lion cubs. And she said, they might hurt you, but they won't kill you. And my picture is me down on the ground playing with a lion cub. And to me, that brings a smile to my face every time I see it. So fill your environment with positivity. Limit your exposure. Remember, I said don't engage, choose not to engage. If you have to engage, which many times we do, we work with those people or their family members or whatever, we're talking about work right now, then limit your exposure. I see flowers and cats and motivational messages. Focus going to the beach at night, listen to smooth jazz. Yes, absolutely. So limit your exposure to the negativity that's around you. It will always be there. You don't have to worry about it going away. Patron letters. Yes, absolutely. I have a notebook, Noelia, that is called Kudos. And when somebody sends me a special email about something that made a difference for them, I print it off. I know I'm not supposed to. I print it off and put it in my notebook so that I can go back and refer to it when maybe days are a little bit more negative. Don't give away your peace. Had somebody tell me once, I will share my joy with anyone, but I'm not going to let anybody steal it. How often does somebody steal your peace or your joy? It happens, doesn't it? We want to make sure it doesn't happen for us. Find the silver lining in whatever's happening. There's probably a silver lining in what we've gone through for the last 2 months. For most of us, I'm an introvert, so the silver lining is I'm home more than I used to be. I could turn that negative because my cats and my dog can drive me crazy. Find the silver lining. Yeah, Sheila, Shirley, it is a good quote, isn't it? And I think about that when people are poking at me. I have an acquaintance, I won't call her a friend, but I have an acquaintance who knows my background. And I wrote a story about my dad in Chicken Soup for the Soul. And it was called The Power of Forgiveness. And it explained my background. And she read that story and we were sitting together one time just visiting. And she said, it's too bad about your background. I said, yeah, I turned out okay. And she said, I know, but the alcoholism, the dysfunction, it's just too bad. And I just looked her straight in the eye and I said, I'm not a victim. And she said one more thing. And I looked at her and I said, my dad taught me morals, a good work ethic, respect. I can't ask for much more than that. And I finally quieted her down. So nobody's going to steal my joy. And part of my joy is what I was taught as a kid. Develop your self awareness and practice self management. Not the first time you heard that, but at work, somebody has to pay attention to that, and that's you, right? Probably not all your coworkers are here today, and if they are, maybe some people won't absorb as much as you did. So develop your self awareness and practice self management. The very bottom of page 3, we are going to move from work to relationships at home, what we're doing to stay positive, and our relationships. Again, limit your exposure. Can't say this often enough. If you've got somebody in your life that is negative, that just drains you at home, it's okay to say, you know what, I have found that for my own peace of mind, I just need 10 or 15 minutes alone, and I'm going to go sit on the porch for a little bit, or whatever it is. Limit your exposure so that you can build yourself up. Have an open conversation with people. I have another friend. It sounds like I have all negative friends, but I don't. I have positive friends, but the ones that come to mind for this particular program are the negative ones. And I've known this guy for decades. He told me the other day, he said, you're my best friend. And I said, well, I hope I make you laugh. And he said, you always make me laugh. So that's a good thing. But one day he called me, and before I even said hello, he started being negative about something. And I said, stop. And he did for a second, and then he started in again. And I said, stop. I told you I'm not going to talk about this with you. And that's just how I said it because I've known him long enough and I had that open conversation. Now, did it stop him? Not completely. It did that day. He still tries to do that once in a while. And I start laughing and I say, told you, I'm not talking about it. And I just won't engage. It's my choice, isn't it? Acknowledge if you're part of the problem. I kind of alluded a little bit to that earlier when we started, that sometimes it is us being contagious. Sometimes it's us being negative, and if we're part of the problem, we need to step back and decide what we're going to do about it. Exactly, Zenobia, you're never going to be positive all day, every second of the day. Wouldn't want you to be. If you're positive every second of every day, you're suppressing feelings. And if you're suppressing feelings, you're going to make yourself sick. I'm sorry about the sound. I don't know what to do. I see an exclamation mark in the chat box, and that might just be that the chat is getting full, so I'm not sure what's going there. So I apologize for that. I wish I could fix it. Try not to get defensive. at home or in relationships. And sometimes it's easier to do that with people that we love or we're close to than we would with somebody we work with because we figure they got to love us anyway. But that doesn't make for a good relationship, does it? Don't overgeneralize. Don't use words like you always, you never, all those kinds of things. Because when we do that, we're being very accusing, aren't we? And then that person, we don't know what their feelings are. They might be getting hurt, they might be getting angry, and that just feeds the negativity. So in relationships, be careful about overgeneralizing. Reward the positive, and I put little quotes around that because that reward could look different for everybody. But when somebody does something relationally for you, reward that. That may be a sincere thank you. It may be you buy them an ice cream cone. It may be you write them a note if it's somebody that's not physically close to you. Exactly, Tracy. We have more patients with patrons than with family. That's absolutely true. And so here's the key, folks. Stepping on toes here. Hope you got your steel-toed boots on. If we know that we have more patients with patrons than family, then we have to get more intentional about having more patience with our friends and family, don't we? It's called intentionality and choices. And it's not easy. Not here to tell you it's easy. It's not easy for me. It's quicker for me now, excuse me, than it was before I started studying all this kind of thing. But it still doesn't come easy every day. However, it's a choice. We can do it. Yep, take deep breaths and sometimes need to walk away for a bit. Absolutely. Don't build mountains out of molehills. So easy to do. Are you kidding me? You couldn't unload the dishwasher? You know, that kind of thing. Really? Is that important? I remember when my husband was sick, and that went on for years, but this was in the later years of that process. And I was just overwhelmed with work and trying to take care of him and take care of all the household stuff and all that. And he said one day, just tell me if there's anything I can do to help. And I said, well, if you ever see dishes in the sink, go ahead and wash them or put them in the dishwasher. And that happens a lot around my house because of animal dishes, food dishes, water dishes, all that kind of stuff. And so when I'm working in the middle of the day, because I work out of my home, I just stack them in the sink and then periodically throughout the day I'll wash them. So about a couple weeks later, he said, you know, really, if there's anything I can do to help. And I looked over and there were dishes in the sink. And I just smiled and I said, well, like I said before, if you ever see dishes in the sink, go ahead and wash them. But I wasn't going to make a mountain out of it. It's not worth it, is it? Dealing with OCD family is exhausting. Yes, it would be. Be grateful that they're trying to help, even if it isn't up to your usual standards. Exactly. And you know what? I appreciated his heart. There was no way I was going to pick him apart on that because his heart was there. He truly did want to help, and that he just didn't even see it. Honor your own limits. Your limits. What are your limits? Do you know that you can only spend a certain amount of time with somebody? Or, for instance, when my sister was alive, and she's been gone for a couple years now, there were times on Saturdays when I called her that I would have to wait a little bit because maybe my patience was running low or I was having a little bit of a negative day. And I knew she was having a negative day because she was disabled and all kinds of things going on for her. And again, my goal is always to make people laugh. And so I knew I would have to build myself up before I could call her. That was one of my limits. Zenobia said, it's a problem for me. It's not up to my standards. Yeah, let it go. I'm just going to say it flat out, Zenobia. Let it go. Unless it's going to hurt somebody or it's causing a safety issue or something, it's not worth it because that's a relational thing that can hurt people. Recognize your own triggers. What triggers you to become more negative in a relationship? Sometimes it is worth stepping back, walking away, taking a deep breath. Know your own triggers because if you don't, you're going to flare up and then you've got to fix something even bigger, don't you? You've fed the negativity and now that flame is even bigger. Okay, so we talked about work. We talked about relationships. What can I do for myself? How can I stay positive? Forgetting work, forgetting relationships, how can I stay positive? Nurture the positivity. Be intentional about it. Focus on it. Find things that work for you. We're going to cover close to 50 things today that could help you. Maybe none of those will work for you, but certainly there should be something that triggered something for you that would work. You have to nurture that. Nobody comes by and says, "Hey, Linda, I know you're running low on positivity. Here's some." No, they just spew some more negativity, don't they? So nurture the positivity. Don't compare, as we talked about earlier. Comparison leads to discontent, whatever it involves. Whether, like I said, car, houses, looks, age, education, whatever it is, finances, doesn't matter. If you're unhappy with something and you can change it, change it. If you can't change, I can't change my age. I would like it to be different. But you know what? This is how I became who I am by living this many years. I'm okay with that. Watch your own phrasing. Be careful about your phrasing. Remember the I wish this would happen. You're wasting time when you're wishing. If only. Well, if it's if only, that was in the past and you can't change the past. Be careful of your phrasing because you're feeding the negativity inside your head, aren't you? When you use those kinds of phrases. Or I have to, like we talked about earlier. Sleep, exercise. You heard those two earlier, but that's for you. That's not for anybody else. Your work or your relationships, it will affect those for sure, but that's for you to help you be more positive. Be a friend. Reach out to people. I have a couple of friends that love to hear from me, but they never reach out. And they're just so thrilled. And I have said to them, phone works both ways, or pretty sure you got email, jokingly, half jokingly. But you know what? If I want to stay friends with them, we have great conversations when I do reach out. So I'm going to be a friend. Hold yourself accountable. This is huge. I can't follow you around after today's program. You wouldn't want me to. I don't have that magic wand that I'm going to wave over you at the end of today. You have to hold yourself accountable, don't you? You're the only one who can. Help somebody else. So 2 weeks ago tomorrow, I was feeding my cats early in the morning. They eat on the sun in the sunroom. It's air conditioned. That's where they sleep. They love it out there. It's a 22-foot window. They love it. I turned around and I saw a stray kitty sitting outside my window, about a foot from my window, and she'd been in the neighborhood. People had been telling me about her, and I'd seen her from a distance. And there she sat on my patio, and she'd been real skittish. Every time anybody had seen her, she'd run as soon as somebody would talk to her. She was about a foot away from my window just staring at me. And I thought, that's weird. I bet she's really hungry. So I went out to get some extra cat food. I know, probably shouldn't have done that, but I did. And as I came back into the sunroom, I saw something black on the patio, and it was a kitten, one of her kittens. And I felt like she was trying to tell me, I got my kid out here and I need some help. So I fed her. I could have trapped her easier if I had not fed her. And I didn't know what to do. I called a couple neighbors. By this time, I'm crying because we have hawks and coyotes, and I'm afraid somebody's going to get the kitten. None of the neighbors made an effort to help. So I finally tracked down an SPCA volunteer, and she said, I'll be there in 10 minutes. She came down with a carrier, two carriers. Mama ran. By the time I called the SPCA lady, I saw three kittens. Mama ran out into the bushes that are outside my patio, which we knew she'd do. We put one carrier down for her, went to get the kitten. She had hidden them behind a spade on my patio. And I reached back to get the kittens, and there were 5 of them in a heap back behind the spade. So we loaded them into one carrier. Long story short, took me all day. The lady had to bring back a humane trap because Mama had done this before and she wasn't going to get in that other carrier. We got her. I got to go visit them with my mask on last Friday. And I'm telling you, it's one of the most positive experiences I've had in the last few months. So help someone else. It might be a fur person, but you can help someone else. And so that was something that made me feel really good. And I gave the SPCA a donation because even though they get a lot of food and stuff donated, there's always expenses with trying to raise kittens and all that kind of stuff. Develop your own self-awareness and practice self-management. That's the third time I've said that. Do you think I find that important? I find that critical because if you're not willing to do that, nothing else we've said matters. Thank you. It was just such a cool thing. So I had nicknamed her. I got to tell you this little addendum. I had nicknamed her Skittles because she was so skittish. The SPCA lady loved that. I wanted to rename her Orphan Annie because she was an orphan in the neighborhood, but she loves Skittles. So now she's got them on Facebook and she calls them Skittles and the Littles. So that's really cute. Does that not make you smile even if you don't like cats? Be careful of your own environment. If there's a lot of clutter around and you love what's around you, that's perfectly okay. Don't let anybody tell you that that's a negative. If you love it, if it makes you feel joyous. But if there's clutter around and it makes you feel heavy, then that's adding to your negativity. Not yet, Zenobia. They have to socialize her enough before they do that, and the kids are still feeding, so they haven't done that yet, but they will, yes. And all the 5 will also be spayed or neutered, whichever they are. So be careful of your environment. Know what's around you. Know if it's bringing you joy. Listen to your self-talk. Yeah, I'm a big believer in that, Zenobia. I just get really frustrated with people that don't do that. So yeah, listen to your self-talk. What are you saying inside your head? Focus on facts, not on feelings. Do you hear that? Once we start focusing on our feelings, our self-talk changes, doesn't it? Look at the way they're treating me. This isn't fair. Why did this happen? All those kinds of things. And that self-talk just escalates the negativity that's within our heads. Be careful of your self-talk. Remember what I said about dropping the jug of milk, where we say, that figures, that's my luck. I can't believe I did something so stupid. Whatever that is not going to serve you well. Be careful of your self-talk and change it when necessary. Listening to yourself is a good idea and usually helpful. Exactly, Natalia. It's been a couple weeks ago now. I was in the bathroom and I did something and I dropped it and it almost went down the drain. And you know what I said? Well, that was stupid. And then I stopped and I said it out loud. I live by myself, so I'm often saying things out loud. And I stopped and I said, that wasn't stupid, Linda. You just weren't paying enough attention. And I changed it right then and there. Do you hear that intentionality? I don't always catch myself, but when I do, I will change it right then and right there so that I change the direction of my mind. I want to tell you about something that I heard about. It's been about a month ago now. I had never heard this term before, and it was another light bulb for me. So I hope it's helpful to you. I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and he had on one of his Ramsey personalities. I don't know if it was King Coleman or John Deloney or whoever it was, but they were talking about the negativity that's out in our world right now. And I think it was King Coleman, and he said, there's a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. And it took me days to get those words right, but reticular activating system. But he said, really, all it is a bundle of nerves that helps you filter what's coming at you. Because tens of thousands of things come at us every day, don't they? Thoughts and emotions and articles and newscasts and people and all of that. And he said, your brain has to help you filter that because there's no way you can absorb all of it. So your brain says, the reticular activating system says, I know, I'll help Linda focus on what she's been focusing on. So guess what? If I'm focusing on the negative, my reticular activating system finds more negative for me. It's like confirmation bias. If I'm already thinking that way, it says that must be what's important to her. I'll find more of it. They related it to when you learn a new word and you think, wow, I've never seen that word. And then in the next week, you see it 17 times because it's been there all along. You just weren't focused on it. Same thing happens with our feelings and our emotions. So be careful of what's coming at you. It's a great term. Gigi said, I negatively talk to myself all the time. I'm my own enemy. It's something I need to change. And think about that. Yes, the journal thing helps with the negativity. Absolutely. And it's okay to talk to yourself in your journal, Gigi, and say, you know what? Here are the good things. If you say something negative about yourself, then you list 2 positive things. But think about that reticular activating system. And Gigi, what's happening when you're negatively self-talking? Your brain helps you find more. I'm telling you, folks, I could sit here and have a whole 90-minute webinar on all the bad things about Linda Bruno. I'm not going there. I like me and I like who I've become. And there are a lot of things that I would change if I had a magic wand, but I don't. So I'm going to be okay just the way I am. So the reticular activating system, be careful of what you're telling it to filter. For instance, be careful of what you're putting in your mind, right? And we'll talk about that in a minute. Consider how you move through your day. Do you get up? A friend of mine said, referred a book to me. It's been probably 3 months ago, and I got the book and I got stuck in it, to be honest with you. if it doesn't keep me engaged, I get stuck. But the first chapter was talking about how you start your day. And it said, as soon as your feet hit the floor, you say out loud, it's going to be a great day. So I've been doing that. And I kind of did that mentally anyway, because that's just how I want to start my day. But the first time I did it, all I could think of was we have a news station called Good News Orlando, and their theme song is, it's going to be a good day. It's going to be a great, great day. And then when I would say it, I would get that stuck in my head. And it just made me smile because I thought I could have worse things stuck in my head. So be careful of how you move through your day. Reframe your thoughts like we talked about earlier when we were talking about the mental help for you to deal with negativity. Reframing those thoughts when they come to you, they will come to you. Let me be clear. They come to everybody. It's okay. They're okay. But sometimes you need to reframe them, don't you? Be on guard. This is what I mentioned earlier. Be on guard about what you feed your mind. I typically watch only comedies for this reason, because there's so much negativity coming at me. So about a week ago, I was watching a comedy, and I'd probably seen it 9 or 10 times. There are only a few on TV that are real comedies anymore. So I was watching it, and one of those banners came across the bottom about coronavirus updates. And the sad part was it said breaking news, and it was the exact same breaking news they'd used the night before. It wasn't breaking news. It was intrusive negativity. And I switched channels because I thought I don't need that coming at me when I have not chosen. I can turn it to the news if I want to see the news, right? Reba said, I love Mondays. Good. And Dwayne said, Monty Python. Yeah, just something that makes you laugh. I watched Johnny Carson reruns the other night. Martin Short was on. A few weeks ago, I watched Robin Williams. Just hysterically funny things that make me laugh out loud. Be careful what you're feeding your mind. There's plenty of negativity out there, but it's up to you to do something about. Maybe you're watching all violent TV programs, and if your brain can handle that, that's fine. My brain can't handle it. I go around in a dark mood when I watch something dark. I started reading a book on the treadmill the other day, and I remembered reading one previous to that in the series, and I was about 5 chapters in when I realized and remembered how dark that story was, and I deleted it from my e-reader. The Birdcage, great humor. Okay, good. I love Lucy. Yeah, you hear me. But the thing is, if you're only watching 30 minutes of that and you're watching 3 hours of the news, the ratio is off, isn't it? Do you hear the difference? If you're spending an hour a day on social media and the news articles, your ratio is off. Be careful, be on guard. So let's think about this. We talked about a lot of things that I kind of am telling you control the controllables, right? Because so much of what's happening to us right now, so much of what happens to us on a regular basis is not in our control. The weather is not in our control. The traffic is not in our control. We're always going to have the uncontrollables. You need to control your controllables. What is that? What does that look like for us? What we do and how we behave. Now, can we control it 100% of the time? No, we kind of do things impulsively, instinctively. We react instead of respond, but we can become more intentional about being better at it, can't we? I can control what I say. If I let that split second from thought to emotion to mouth, if I catch it between emotion and mouth, I can control what I say. I can control what I think. I can't control the thought from coming, but I can control what I do with that thought, can't I? How long am I going to wallow in it? How am I going to feed it? What am I going to do with it? How am I going to react to it? Sheila said we need the brain to mouth filter. Exactly. But it's our choice to set that up, isn't it, Sheila? I'm a visual person, so I love creating images in my mind that help me do those kinds of things. And again, we won't always get it right. I want to take that burden of negativity off of you right now. We won't always get it right. But if we can improve from G to M, think about the difference that would make in our lives. I had a lady, we were working, I can't remember what we were working on. It wasn't negativity, but it was something else. And I used the same analogy. And I said, if I can move you from F to P today, that's going to make an improvement in your workplace. And she said, I just need you to move me from B to C. So whatever it takes, any kind of improvement is going to help, right? We can control our work. No, I can't, if I had decided today, well, the webinar starts at 10, but I want to journal some more. So I'm just going to let Taylor know I'll probably show up about 10:15. No, I can't control that. I made a commitment. I'm going to live up to my commitment. But I can control who I work with. I can control how well I do my work, right? Because sometimes when we let the ants take hold, the quality of our work slips because we think, who cares? And then that feeds negativity, doesn't it? We can control our work to that degree and do it well. We can control the people we associate with. Maybe not the people per se, but again, limiting our exposure, choosing not to engage, all of those kinds of things. So the people we associate with. Noelia said, I love creating lists for my work that day because it helps me prepare to do it and be less anxious about it. Exactly. And you've set a goal then, haven't you? And that sense of accomplishment, once you set those goals and check things off of your list, leads to positivity about your work. My basic physical well-being, and I put basic on there because some of us have underlying conditions. I have arthritis in my left foot that drives me crazy sometimes. And I will tell you that a few months ago when it was flaring up, I was sorely tempted to quit exercising. No, let's change that. I was going to use that as an excuse to quit exercising. Did you hear me? Yeah, I was going to use it as an excuse. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for several years. I don't want to give this up. I do feel better physically. And so I adapted my exercise routine. Now my arthritis in my foot bothers me maybe once every couple of weeks. Exactly, Tracy. That was good. That was really good. You made us laugh. I love that. You were sorely tempted. I surely was. So be careful of your basic physical well-being. Thank you for making me laugh, folks. Some of the things that you put in there today have made me chuckle. The environment I live in, and no, this isn't my office, but sometimes it feels like it looks this way. It doesn't ever, by the way. But I'm, as I said, a visual person, so a lot of my projects are out in front of me. Periodically, I have to step back from that and say, you know what? This isn't serving me well. This is starting to feel heavy and negative. And I step back, I take 10 or 15 minutes, I sort through, I trash some things, I file some things, I reorganize some things, and I get things back in order so that my environment makes me positive and doesn't weigh me down. My fiscal situation. Again, certain things can't control. I can control my retail therapy tendencies, and I don't do that anymore. It's just, I read a book once and it said your money or your life. And it was talking about if you make purchases, think about how much of your life you give up to pay for that purchase or what else you're giving up in the future to pay for that purpose. And I have financial goals like everybody else. And so now I try to consider, do I want to spend that $20 on a new top when I've got plenty of tops already hanging in my closet? Or would I like to apply that to my future goals? So be careful of your fiscal situation because you do have some control, quite a bit really, over your fiscal situation. Your time. Again, you've got to report to work when you're supposed to report to work. But if I required, which I can't, nor would I, but if I required you all to keep an honest chart for a week of where your time goes during the day, how much of it would go to social media? And somebody said to me once, well, that's my job. And I just looked her in the eye and I said, so you're telling me all the time you spend on social media is directly related to your job? And her face got red and she grinned at me and she said, no, exactly. Where are we spending our time? And does it bring us joy and positivity? My legacy. I'm not going to worry about somebody saying, oh, yeah, Linda Bruno, she lived in a big house. She doesn't. She lives in a little villa in Ocala or anything like that. But I do hope at some point down the road, somebody remembers what I did and that I made a difference. When my husband passed away, I put in the obituary, in lieu of flowers, please send stories. And I gave my email address. And I got some stories from people I had never heard of that talked about how he changed their lives, how he got them loving music, how he found the first guitar for them, those kinds of things. And I've got those in a notebook. How cool. He didn't know he had that legacy. None of us will know what our legacy is, but we have control over it to some degree, don't we? Deb said fiscal can equal time. Absolutely. Everything we buy has to be managed in some capacity. Yeah, we give up our time to buy it, don't we? Absolutely. I can control me to such a high degree. I can control me if I make the choice to see results after today's webinar instead of make excuses. That's the key, isn't it? I heard a story again on Dave Ramsey. He was interviewing Henry Cloud, who's an author about behaviors and things like that. And they were interviewing on the phone because of the pandemic. And he said, I was reading in one of your books a story about your daughter. And he said, oh, yeah, Olivia. He said, Olivia, my daughter couldn't sleep one night, a little girl, and she called out for daddy. And he went into her room and he said, what's wrong, Olivia? And she said, I can't sleep. And so he told her to count sheep. And he told her how to count sheep. And she started counting her sheep and he went back to bed. And a few minutes later, she started crying again, Daddy, Daddy. And he went to her room and he said, what's wrong? And she said, my sheep keep crashing into the fence. And he said, Olivia, they're your sheep. You can control them. Do you hear a parallel here? They're our thoughts. It's our life. We have so much more control than we're willing to admit because it's easier to make excuses, isn't it? Simplify, absolutely, Ellen. That's a good way to do it as well. We can control us. But the thing is, there are going to be obstacles, or you'd already be doing all of this. Or I would be doing it 100% of the time, and I don't. I want you to get a hold of that blind area. What are your obstacles going to be? What will you face while you're trying to keep your shield up to ward off negativity? Being honest with yourself. And how are you going to overcome that? Would you type that into the chat box? What obstacles are going to come up? You already know what they are. Are you going to make excuses about your time or about the people around you or about this is just the way you are, this is how you were raised, you're in a negative environment? What is going to be your obstacle and how are you going to overcome that obstacle? Mental laziness. Thank you for being honest, Sheila. We all have that, don't we, to some degree? Because it's harder for us to make changes than it is for us to stay the same, even if we know the same isn't making us happy. Did you hear that? It's harder for us to make a change that we're pretty sure will make us happy than it is to stay the same, even when that won't make us happy. Thank you, Natalia. I loved it. It came out really well. I think you would have been surprised. Don't allow buttons to be pushed. Absolutely. Know what your triggers are, right, Ellen? And prepare for them. Claudia said, my niece was once having trouble riding a horse. She exclaimed as an excuse, these boots don't work. I love that. I go horseback riding occasionally. I may have to use that. Well, I don't know if I go that far, Joan. Maybe try to work through it. Not sure. Lisa said, taking the first step, whatever that step is. You have to take the first step. Negative thoughts sneaking in. Good. I'm glad, Joan. I would love to have my back. Just saying. Love to have him back. Joanne said, how I've thought in the past, hard to get past that. Yes, it is. Don't let negativity define who you are. But that's why you're here today, isn't it, Joanne? To get past how you've thought in the past. And you can. I did. Procrastinating and not wanting to face change and bitterness. Yeah. And the bitterness, Mary, it's not doing anybody any harm but you. That's the hard part about those kinds of feelings, resentment and bitterness and those kinds of things. We're the only ones that suffer with that. So be careful about that. Don't forget, everybody, you have my email address if you need to flesh anything out. Again, I'm not a psychologist, but I'd love to help people. I hope you hear my heart, and I will tell you where I've messed up as well, and maybe my mess ups will help you. Yes, it can turn to depression. And let me just say, if you feel you have depression, then you need to get help from somebody who's a professional in that area, from your family doctor or somebody like that. Because if that's where it's at, that's where it's at, and you need to deal with that. And it's a very real thing, and there's nothing to be ashamed of. Get the help you need so that you can turn it around. Here's something that has stuck with me. The walls of your mind will never stay bare. You get to choose what you're going to put on the walls of your mind because they won't stay bare. So we had nearly 50 tips of what we discussed. I hope you found something that you can use. Here's another quote that I love. You can't have a positive life with a negative mind. Thanks everybody for being here today. Go and keep your shields up And if you need me, you know how to reach me. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Linda, for such a positive webinar this morning. Attendees, if you enjoyed this webinar, we ask that you join us tomorrow at 2 p.m. for Linda's next webinar, Change, Dealing with the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you everyone for attending and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Deb. And thanks, everybody, for your participation.